Hello and welcome. Welcome to Meeting the Net Zero Housing Challenge. Thanks for joining us today at the BISA National Conference. My name is Ewen Rose and I will be your chair for today. As you can see, and our speaker is there, who is Nigel Banks from Ilke Homes. So welcome everybody. So Meeting the Net Zero Housing Challenge. Now there's a big challenge for all of us. And countries all around the world are wrestling with this particular challenge: how to improve your housing stock while also meeting climate change goals. COP26 has obviously brought this to the national attention, but real practical solutions are very hard to find. And George Clark, who gave our opening keynote yesterday, George, the TV personality and architect, talked about specifically the topic that Nigel is going to be talking about today. Now, Nigel, I don't know if you were aware that George spoke specifically about exactly what you were doing. So this couldn't be better timed. So
yeah,
George has been take that as a major endorsement. Yeah, exactly. Great endorsement. I'd like to introduce our speaker, who is Nigel Banks. He's Director of Special Projects at Ilke Homes. And he's going to explain how the UK can increase the number of homes being built while still meeting climate goals. He's going to focus on operational issues primarily, but he'll also consider the impact of embodied carbon and how homes can be adapted.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ewan. Thanks, Ewan. So, good morning, everyone. So, as Ewan said, Nigel Banks from Ilke Homes. So, I'm going to be focusing on the new build net zero housing challenge. A lot of the solutions are applicable to existing homes. Clearly, the existing stock has some significant fabric improvement challenges before some of the technologies can be applied. So I'll flick through a presentation, and then I've got a 20-minute presentation. Happy to take any Q&A on any of this at the end. I'm sure we'll have a good chat with you as well at the end. So a little bit about us as a business to start with, and then I'll go through some of the areas of innovation we've been doing and focus on our net zero solutions and where we're headed. So first of all, why modular housing? I think most people are hopefully familiar with some of these list of issues on the left. We have a significant skill shortage, that second bottom one, which is probably the most pressing, and that was one of the reasons the Ilke Home business was created in the first place. I was previously working at national house builder Keepmoat Homes and contractor Keepmoat Regeneration, and we were struggling to get hold of a number of trades and really looking to see how we could tackle that challenge. The other significant issue is around quality, and I think resolving quality issues and snagging issues with new build homes has and continues to be a challenge. There's some broader reasons for looking at modular housing. UK productivity has stalled. In construction, it has never really increased in the last 20 years, whereas other sectors have had massive transformations. Our view is we need to carry on building traditional homes much better, but at the same volumes or as more as we can with the skills and availability of labour that we have. But to build more homes, we'll need to build and bring in people from outside the construction sector through modern manufacturing. One too many. So in terms of who we are, so we're based up in North Yorkshire. I'm at the factory today. This is our factory just off the A1. We are building at pretty reasonable scale already. We have over 500 team members directly employed in the business. We're manufacturing 2 homes at the moment. We are recruiting another 500 people to scale up to deliver 8 homes a day from this factory, 2,000 homes a year, hopefully by towards the end of next year. We're currently focused on family housing, and we'll show you some of the sites we're doing shortly. The business is founded around trying to really transform and revolutionise house building in terms of bringing a new, more diverse talent pool from outside construction to build more homes, to do that in a more environmentally friendly way. And we'll talk about the Ilke Zero solution shortly. Also about creating new communities and place and scaling that up to do that in a profitable way. So this little video hopefully will come through nicely, and you can see a little bit inside the factory. So it's where they used to print the yellow pages, and we've brought together some of the best in modern design and modern manufacturing to enable us to build and manufacture homes in a very different way, such that they can be installed very quickly and we go and can install large sites in half the time of that of a traditional build. So looking at that site install process in a bit more detail, this is one of the more recent sites we've done where we've taken on the full end-to-end journey. This is three-story homes installed in just 4 hours in Drybrook in Gloucestershire. And you can see this is one afternoon's work on our site. And those homes are installed onto live gas, electricity and water services. So it can start commissioning the same day. And that same crane, you can see all the bases and foundations are in. That same crane location can then install typically another 5 to 10 homes in the next couple of days. And we can deliver sites in typically half the time, including the groundworks of a traditional home. Clearly, the installation of the superstructure is much, much faster than you would do on a traditional build. So we have significantly accelerated that process, and 95% of the roles in the factory manufacturing homes do not require a trade background. So we are recruiting people from outside the sector to manufacture homes, which is where you get the additional capacity around that. So in terms of what we're doing, we're building across England and Wales currently, and I'll come and talk about some of the zero carbon sites we've done. We've delivered 5 zero carbon sites, but we've got homes installed on, I think, nearly 40 sites today. We've got around 10 sites live at the moment and a pipeline of over 3,000 homes contracted. So that's the confidence we have in scaling up our business to grow our pipeline and build more fantastic homes across the country. So one of the things before we get the ilke zero and the zero carbon journey is a key part of the journey, but it's only a part of our innovation journey and what we're trying to do around revolutionising house building. I thought I'd touch on some of that because it does build in terms of how we're able to do things differently and why we're doing some of the things differently. So one of the things is around design, and this touches and impacts on waste as well. So we've developed our own code. There's about 1 million lines of code we've written working with a company called MATLAB to automate the design process as well as the manufacturing process. So we take the Revit models, and in about 10 minutes we can produce all the drawings and the manufacturing code for robotics. That also looks at how we can nest boards, how we can minimize waste, how we can produce boards from the offcuts from windows to make other components and parts on our production line. And that's, again, part of the looking at what we've done around embodied carbon and waste materials. When you're in a modern manufacturing environment, you can use the CNC routers to cut out not just the window openings, but use those same boards to cut out some of the other components we need in the house. Another area we've done is looking at embodied carbon around the structure. So we've done a lot of work around optimizing the structure using advanced F1 FEA and testing, and that's enabled us to build homes with around 15% less steel than we originally started from, and our homes are about a third of the weight of a traditionally built house. So that also impacts on the foundation and the embodied carbon in the foundations. And yet the homes that we've built with much less steel are now even stronger. In fact, they were so strong, we actually broke the testing machine at the laboratory for the racking test on the wall strength. So clearly our homes have to be extremely strong because they need to be able to be lifted on a crane. Clearly, if you had a traditionally built home, you wouldn't be able to lift that on half the house on a crane. So a big focus around that, and that does impact on some of the embodied carbon. But I want to focus now on the on the operational carbon, because that is currently where housing has its biggest impact. That will hopefully change as we decarbonise our housing stock and move to zero operational carbon. So we've built 5 zero carbon sites to date, and know that we can and must do more. So those sites have delivered fantastic performance, but I say we know we can do more. And so we've launched what we called ilke zero. So that's our commitment that by 2030, we will only build zero carbon homes. But more than that, we believe we will only build homes with zero energy bills. And we'll do that for zero additional cost compared to traditional construction. So the zero carbon one is relatively straightforward. The zero bills is technically quite challenging, and clearly the zero cost is commercially another challenge. So I'll talk through where we are on those and what we mean by those as well, because I think that's they're all quite interesting challenges in their own right. And I say we've been on a journey. The business is only 3 years old, of just turned 4, in fact. So we're in our sort of 3rd year of trading currently. The very first homes we built were zero carbon, and we're on a journey towards that. Next year, the regs change, and some of the technology and some of the fabric spec that we do will have to be employed across the housing stock. And then we'll go through to talk about what's happening beyond then. So here's a couple of the sites we've done which have delivered zero carbon performance to date. This is Gateshead Innovation Village with Home Group, air source heat pumps, solar PV on east and west facing roofs. Performed very well. I've got good feedback that has been monitored by the BRE. We haven't the monitoring data hasn't been published yet. Hopefully that will be out soon. But that site also tested other solutions, other forms of manufacturing, and manufacture of the houses and construction techniques. We completed our homes before other solutions were out of the ground and completed their foundations. More recently, we've built some homes in London that were the first to meet the London Plan SAP 10 zero carbon requirements. We did that without the need for offsets. So we achieved 100% dwelling emission rate reduction without the need for offsets through a combination of the high performance fabric, air source heat pumps, and solar PV. And I'll go through that in a bit more detail. So we've evolved our design and our solution over time. But hopefully you can see that we are not just talking about this, but we have already done this. But going forward, there's a big journey ahead of us, and there's a big journey for the whole housing sector. From 2025, the Future Home Standard will mean that no home will be able to be built with a natural gas boiler or any other form of fossil fuel heating. Air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, or electric heating will be required. And they will become zero carbon as the grid decarbonises. There's also a requirement for higher fabric specification, that Future Home Standard, and other regulations starting to come in next year around overheating and other aspects will also drive a step change in the performance of existing new build house or all new build housing. So that's going to have a step change for the whole industry, but we think we can go beyond that, and I'll want to talk to you around what we're thinking and what we mean by zero carbon, zero bills, and zero cost. So our base specification is pretty good, and I'll go through it in a bit more detail. It's about 20% beyond current regs. Electric vehicle charging points are becoming standard on our housing spec. Next year, house builders will have to pretty much build to our fabric spec, which is about 20% better than today, than new build today as standard, and either apply an air source heat pump or solar PV panels. And then from so that's those coming through. And then from 2025, you'll need to apply an air source heat pump. And to get to zero carbon in areas like London and areas which are wanting to achieve zero carbon performance, you'll need all those technologies combined. So if I could break that down in a bit more detail and focus on each of the aspects of the ilke zero. So by zero carbon, we're talking about dwelling emission rates of 0 or less. We'll go on to talk a bit more detail around getting to true net zero as well. But a typical new build has a dwelling emission rate around 17 kilograms of carbon per metre square per year. Our fabric spec gets us to around 15. And then other energy efficiency measures can have another meaningful improvement. The big carbon saving in the new SAP and in Part L21 comes from the air source heat pump. Electricity is a third of what it was in SAP 2012 and makes the biggest difference on getting to net zero. So you can get to a very low carbon footprint with the air source heat pump, providing heating at water, but you do need some extra solar PV to get to zero carbon. We also think you can get to net zero energy, which would cover the appliance use with addition of further solar PV, and that is part of our ilke zero spec. To get to zero bills, it's the same technologies, but they have a different impact. So the fabric has a big impact compared to an existing home, clearly, on energy bills. So a typical existing home has a bill of around £1,200, although next year that will probably be higher. Our spec is better still, with a better fabric spec. The air source heat pump with smart controls and a smart tariff can reduce your bills. But if you're on a standard tariff, it could increase your bills, and that's a really important thing to consider when you're looking at air source heat pumps, because the cost of electricity is about 4 times that of gas today. But the solar PV has a big impact because you've moved to a fully electric house, and it's impacting all your electricity use, which is covering your heating and your hot water. You also haven't got a gas bill, so that also helps on your energy bills. But to get to zero bills, we need further solar PV and battery storage and smart controls to achieve that. So we've run the numbers. We think we can get there. We're hoping to trial that soon. We haven't trialed that zero bill spec yet. We've run it in the numbers, and we're confident it will work. But it does require a real step change on a number of areas. To get to zero cost, there's a number of things that we're working on and that we do in all aspects of our business. So there are 5 key fundamental aspects of our zero cost strategy. One is designing with zero carbon and zero bills in mind from day one, and really design with those technologies. And I'll explain a little bit around how we're doing that. Second area is around materials. So that's partly around using less materials. So a good example is we are, from both an embodied carbon and a cost point of view, looking to do in-roof solar PV. So reduce the number of concrete tiles on the roof by replacing with solar panels, which has got a lower carbon footprint, but also gives a better aesthetic. And if you offset the cost of the roof material, it can offset some of the cost of the solar PV. And an interesting fact that our CEO is very like to talk about is the cost of PV's dropped tenfold in 10 years, and it's still dropping. But solar panels today are cheaper than many roof slates, and therefore replacing, if you had a high spec roof slate roof, a solar panel roof is probably as coming at the same cost, if not cheaper, than roof slate roof. The third aspect is around labour costs. We directly employ most of our staff today, and are looking at how we can reduce the labour aspects in the technology we're talking about. We're also looking at how we can automate. We've automated probably around a quarter of our production process to date, and there's opportunity to do more in that space, and that would again give us confidence that we can do more in this area. And then there's a continuous improvement. That's probably the biggest thing for me, having come from traditional construction and working now in a manufacturing environment, is we have a product. That product iterates and improves, and iterates and improves, and iterates and improves. That journey is never ending. Whereas one of the things that really frustrated me about traditional construction is it's a new team, it's a new site, it's a new process, and the learning doesn't happen. And if there is learning, it's over a 2-3 year cycle, not a 10-minute cycle that it can be in some parts of the factory, in terms of seeing an issue, understand the issue, resolving it, updating it, and making sure the next module that goes down through the production line doesn't have that same problem again. So there is a real, and that gives us huge confidence in what we've seen to date, and to where we see we can go in the future. So just a quick example, and then I'll wrap up and open up to Q&A. I think the redesign for heat pumps. So this is a sort of cut through of a typical ground floor. We have redesigned all our ground floors to make space for a hot water cylinder by the front door, and have redesigned all our pipework and our bend radiuses on our pipework and our radiator locations to suit a 40-degree flow temperature and get high performance out of our heat pumps. And we're doing that on all homes we build. We still do build homes with gas boilers because that currently works in the current regs and is more cost effective, and it's what clients are asking for still. Hopefully that will change, and we are seeing a big shift next year, and hopefully that will shift to air source heat pumps 100% fairly soon. But by having that standard specification of the radiator sizes, the pipework design for heat pumps, that will mean, even with a gas boiler, we'll be running at lower flow temperatures and getting condensing and better performance. And the cylinders cupboard is there, ready for swapping out the gas boiler for a heat pump in the future. Also, considering practical considerations around aesthetics, a lot of people don't want an air source heat pump in front of their home. As a result, we're now looking at having the air source heat pump both having an option at the front of the house, which is useful for maintenance and can be better from an acoustic perspective, but also having the option of having it at the rear of the home. So again, design those routes, how you can do that, and having the flexibility in manufacturing to be able to achieve those is something we've redesigned, and now a more cost-effective solution that we can keep consistently manufactured in the same way through our factory. If you are interested in more information on what we're doing and some of the costs that we see today, we've been pretty transparent and published that. There's a slightly longer video also on our website, and a detailed technical guide you can download. We've been trying to be quite transparent around where we are and the journey we're on, and we are keen to engage with supply chain and partners to deliver this and make ilke Zero happen, hopefully before 2030. So that's the journey we're on, and some of the things we've done to date, and hopefully that is a useful introduction to where we've been and where we're going. So on that, I will end there and look to pass on over to Ewen and pick up on any Q&A. Okay. So I think Ewan's just struggling a little bit with the audio, his end. So hopefully he will be able to join us again shortly. Still not got you, Ewan. So I don't know if there's any other way we can get the Q&A in. I can't see the Q&A on the screen. I think Ewan's got that. So if we give him a second, hopefully that will resolve itself shortly. Just checking you're not on mute, Ewan. That's the usual issue with these things. Yep. Okay, so if Ewan doesn't come back on, I think we'll probably wrap stuff up. So I guess there's a couple of common questions we do get asked, which is around some of the costs. So currently our costs are similar to that of traditional construction, and we're competing on the open market against major house builders and buying land at scale to do that. Oh, I think Ewan, you're back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're in.
So it's been so I'm so sorry about that. We lost audio completely, so I've just come in on a different laptop. So apologies to everybody. Nigel, thank you very much. I heard some of your presentation, and I knew a bit about it anyway from the background. So we've got a few questions for you, so I'll just scamper through those. A lot of our delegates are interested in, while you are delivering a fantastic solution that is going to revolutionise how we decarbonise the housing stock, they're also interested in this balance with health and well-being. So looking at things like indoor air quality and how we actually get that balance right. And apologies if you did cover this in a part of the presentation, but one of our delegates has asked about that. So how do you manage that balance?
So it's a really interesting point, and it's one we started off the very first houses we built with full MVHR, and the feedback from our client base. So we're building homes for a variety of different clients. Some about a third of what we've been built to date has been sold on the open market on private sale, and about a third to sort of 50% the other has been in with housing association, local authorities. And the feedback we've had, certainly from the housing association, local authorities, is they're not keen on the maintenance and noise issues around MVHR. I think some of that has historically been from poor installation practices. And so as a result of that, we went for MEV, mechanical extract ventilation system 3, which gives you a continuous extract. So you have continuous ventilation to the home, but you're not reliant on filter changes, and it's a quieter system, or should be a quieter system, running a trickle with the potential to boost with opening windows to give purge ventilation. So that was largely based on customer feedback that they had concerns around MVHR, and I think that's a similar concern that's there in retrofit. I've done MVHR in my own house and would do it again. But it's an interesting question around if people turn the MVHR system off because concern around noise, concern around energy bills, not understanding how it works, then you are left with a very airtight building with no ventilation, which can make things worse. So And interestingly, when we run the calcs, the energy saving isn't huge. And when you move to electric air source heat pump heating on a low carbon grid, the embodied carbon of the actual MVHR may not necessarily on a whole life basis deliver much of a saving when you look at the filter replacement. So there's some interesting discussions we had there. I think our current solution works and we're comfortable with it. If we're forced towards MVHR with Future Home Standard, then that's what we'll have to look at. But it's one which I don't think is a cut and dry. That's necessarily the right answer, which may not be what some of the audience want to hear.
It's an interesting one. Yeah. It's interesting because in our Visa Health and Wellbeing in Buildings group, there's been quite a lot of discussion about difficulties around MVHR and the problems people have both with possibly not having the skills to install them properly, and then there's a maintenance issue, and that has obviously had an impact on people's health and well-being. So it's there's a bit of work to be done in that area, and interesting that you had that feedback. Another thing, something that George Clark was talking about yesterday was the importance of being able to do things at scale, which is obviously what you were talking about. But he also said it was a way to be rigorous and to test things, because if you build them in a clean offsite environment, you can actually test things rigorously and make sure they're all working properly before you deliver to site. I know you have discussions with government, and in fact, I believe you have a meeting this afternoon with officials, or maybe that's confidential. Is this a message you feel is getting out to the wider world and to our politicians, that this is a solution where you can actually test things more rigorously, so therefore improve long-term performance?
Yeah, I think it's something that the whole house building industry and construction industry is grappling with, and I think it's one of the things that for me has been interesting, learning the way the manufacturing industry works, and it is a very different way of working. Instead of relying on skilled tradespeople to follow protocols and work things out and solve problems, manufacturing is resolved and done a different way. So we follow standard operating procedures to deliver standard work with people skilled in a narrow area of focus, which means they don't need to be tradespeople. We bring in sub-assemblies. So a good example, we've been working closely with Polypipe to make pre-made sub-assemblies that are pre-tested, pre-pressure tested. Those joints, those mechanisms are pre-pressure tested when they come in, and that makes a sub-assembly which we then have confidence in that when we install that isn't going to have leaks at joints or other issues. So, and it makes it also easier to install. So we are very much an assembly line rather than a construction in a shed. This is modern manufacturing, and at each stage of the process there are quality control checks and sign-offs, and there's quality inspection standards. An independent quality team inspects at certain key stages. We then have third-party audits by NHBC and BOPAS on a regular basis to inspect, to give that third-party assurance as well. And it's just a very different way of working. You're not relying on individuals doing things and knowing how to do things in a certain way. You're very much relying on a system and a process and checks and balances at every stage in the process as it moves down through the production line to do that. And that does give a significant consistency of output and consistency of benefit. So it's a very different way of working, but we still have to solve the challenges of how we do better on traditional sites. And we can clearly in our manufacturing environment can solve and resolve issues and learn from those. So yeah, there is a lot of testing we do in terms of not just testing through the production process, but also testing our products before we go into adopting a product. So we've done a huge amount of clean fire testing, a huge amount of testing of the product in terms of the structural racking test that I talked about. And then we do test all the electrical systems and mechanical systems in the factory before they leave. But then obviously when they're assembled, the modules come together, we then need to do a final set of testing and commissioning on site. Things like acoustics and robust details are also now approved, and that gives us confidence around that. And what we do see is real consistency of performance. If there's an issue, we have got a consistent issue and we need to resolve that, but also therefore we know we've got a consistent issue. because until we've fixed it in the factory, we know those modules that have gone through will need to be resolved. If there's an issue around part of the process, we can then go back and plan for that and fix that. Whereas I think in a traditional environment, those problems will be dotted around depending on who's done that work, and that makes it much harder to manage and resolve. So a real mixture of aspects there. It looks like we might have lost. Yeah, looks like we've lost Ewan again. So I think so. It looks like if Ewan doesn't come back on, it looks like the feedback is that we'll wrap up the session here. If there are other questions, I'm happy to drop people a note back. I will try and join the chat in the main forum shortly, and happy to touch base with people. If people are interested in getting in touch and feel they can help us on our journey to zero cost and zero bills, really interested to speak to people. If people have got technical solutions or products or ideas of how things do things better, we're all ears. We have ability to very quickly adopt products, and as long as they can get through an HPC warranty, it's probably the one sticking point, and then put them into a pretty decent scale from in our factory very quickly. So really keen to hear from people, and hopefully people found that useful this morning. Apologies for some of the technical issues with that Ewan's having back at Besa, and yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.